We are back. How's it going, introductory psychology class? It's me, Professor Gerding, part 2 of Therapies. We're using the OpenStax book, and that means we're in chapter 16. But let's talk about good old Sigmund Freud, and psychoanalysis. Let's get you better by talking about your unconscious. This is part 2 of, I don't know how many parts yet because I haven't finished it. I'm expecting 5 parts, each about 10 minutes. So let's get through this, shall we? All right. So here we have Sigmund Freud's therapy. Sigmund Freud, big deal back in the day. Guy from Vienna. That's a picture of his office right there. That's a couch. He had a whole bunch of Victorian ladies lie down on that couch, and he had them tell him whatever they wanted to talk about. He said, "Lay it on me. Say whatever you want." Because a big part of his theories was making sure you weren't filtering what you were talking about. Sigmund Freud has been criticized as a kook and had some wacky ideas. He suggested that what motivates everyone is sex. That's it. The reason you get up in the morning is you want sex. But he later added on aggression. Why? Because of World War II. He saw those Nazis and thought, you know what? I don't think these guys are after sex after all. So why do we still study Sigmund Freud if a lot of his ideas are criticized as kooky? Well, his therapy worked. A lot of clients claimed that they got a lot better through his help. And he gave us some key terms that we still use to this day. So, let's talk about it. Causes of psychological problems, according to good old Sigmund Freud, these are problems that come from your unconscious. So what we're aware of is just the tip of the iceberg. If you think you know why you're doing certain things, according to him, that's what's in your consciousness, and that's only the tip of it. Most of who we are comes from our unconscious. So all of these bad things that we're doing are because we've repressed who we really are and what we really want to do. And so they seep out of this unconscious, deep, dark water in some ways, manifesting in these bad behaviors. So according to Sigmund Freud, if we understand these bad behaviors and we know the urges, then it will be easier not to act on them. The worst thing we can do is deny that we even have them, according to Sigmund Freud, of course. So we are going to talk more about some of his key factors that he did in his own therapy sessions. Let's get to it, shall we? So, techniques of psychoanalysis. The first one is free association. This is basically diarrhea of the mouth. You're supposed to spontaneously report any feelings that you have. Just keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. Most of us have a filter. I know that we all have a crazy Aunt Sally that doesn't have a filter, and maybe she should think about what she's about to say before she says it. But according to Sigmund Freud, time to start acting like crazy Aunt Sally. Just keep on talking whatever you want to talk about. And that's free association. Just talk, talk, talk. Don't stop. Just let it all out. Let it all out. Don't filter. Don't filter. That's free association. A very popular free association technique is word association. Tell me the first word that comes to your mind when I say mother. What is the first word that comes to your mind when I say justice? These are these type of games that Sigmund Freud would play to get you used to not inhibiting your thoughts. Let your unconscious fly. So of course, he had this idea of dream interpretation and hypnosis, and we're going to talk about those after we talk about resistance. Resistance is gold. This is something that Sigmund Freud used to assess what you should be talking about in a therapy session. According to Sigmund Freud, quitting smoking, that's easy. How do you quit smoking? You stop smoking. I shouldn't say it's easy, I should say it's simple. There's a difference there. It's simple. Stop smoking. If you have a fear of spiders, getting over that fear of spiders is simple, according to Sigmund Freud. What do? Stop being so damn scared of spiders. But we don't. This is because of resistance. Each one of us fights against ourselves, and it impedes our therapeutic progress. Inside, we know what we have to do in order to be healthier psychologically. But we don't do those things. Why? Because it's hard. Just like you know what you need to do to get in better shape, lose some of that weight, we also know what we need to do in order to be psychologically healthier, but we don't do it because of resistance. So in a Sigmund Freud session, he would find out what you didn't want to talk about, and that's what you'd want to talk about. Hey Freud, we can talk about anything here, but I really don't feel like talking about my cousin. It's a whole bag of potatoes I don't want to get into. Really? Well, tell me about your cousin. And why don't you want to talk about your cousin? That's what Sigmund Freud would say, because he wants to blast through that resistance. So resistance, patient's unconscious attempt to block progress. That's resistance, the tuning fork boing, of where we need to go in order to make ourselves better. So here's another vocabulary term, dream interpretation. According to Sigmund Freud, dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. When we're sleeping, that's when we're not able to filter our thoughts anymore. We're able to do all sorts of nasty things, all sorts of violent things, all sorts of these dreams that are actually, according to what he says, is wish fulfillment. In our dreams, our wishes can come true. So the one thing he really emphasized too is when you came in and you sat on Siggy's couch, he'd say, tell me about your dreams. Dream interpretation. And then he also talked about transference. Hot diggity damn. This is really important. Again, another gold standard that Sigmund Freud gave us. We want transference to happen in a therapy session. So what the hell is transference? Well, it's when a client comes in and they have a problem in their life, but they project that problem onto the therapist. For instance, I've had examples of someone coming in and they have issues with their father. Their complaints about their father is that their father doesn't listen to them, doesn't really care about them, and only judges them. Nothing they do will ever be good enough for their father. And the same client eventually explodes on their therapist. Basically, if I was their therapist, me. And what do you think they accuse me of doing? The exact same stuff. You know what? You don't even listen to me. You don't care about me. You're just sitting there with your notepad taking notes. All I am to you is a paycheck, Dad. There's nothing I can do that will be good enough, and you don't want me to get better. You don't. You hope that I stay horrible. And if you paid attention in this example, there was actually this Freudian slip, as we called it, where he actually said the word dad. So anyways, transference can be that obvious, where someone actually slips up and calls you dad. Here's one interesting thing. Let's suppose I had a client who was a woman that was really angry at their grandmother because maybe their grandmother is sick and dying, and now the grandmother is living at their home, and they are expected to take care of their grandmother, and this is pissing them off and really hurting them. Well, transference isn't likely to happen in that setting with me as their clinician. Why? Not sure you know this about me, but I'm not an old woman. So it's a little harder to imagine me as the grandmother if I'm not an old woman. This is where group therapy comes into play, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother YouTube episode of Professor Gerding Teaches Introductory Psychology. But here's the main question I want to talk about with transference. Why do we want transference to happen in the therapy session? And this is really important. Maybe you've heard one of those cliche moments where a therapist says, we had a breakthrough today. Good day, we had a breakthrough. Usually that's because someone had this outburst of transference. I'm sick of you! Boom. Why is this a good thing? Well, I want you to ask yourself as you're listening to this YouTube video, what would you do if you really were angry at a parent, we'll say, and you know that you really want to tell them what they're doing wrong? Maybe they're being a hypocrite, maybe they're being overly judgmental, and you've wanted to say something to them, but you haven't. Why don't you say that to your parents? And the truth of the matter, according to Sigmund Freud, is the reason that you're not totally honest with your parents, especially when you're a child, is because you don't want them to leave you. You don't want to permanently damage the relationship. And I hate saying this. I can't tell you you should be totally honest with your parents and have open communication. That would be great. But the reality is, there's been plenty of times where parents have kicked out their children. Get out! You don't talk to me like that! You respect my authority! So that has happened plenty of times. So I can't tell you that, but I really want us to focus on what this means. If you can't be honest with your feelings and your emotions with your parents, this gives you this foundation on how you interact with all relationships in the future. You bite your tongue, you hold your tongue, and you're not able to share things until it gets to a boiling point and then you explode. You learn this at an early age when your parents tell you not to share things. So why is it important to have transference in the therapy session? Because your clinician is not going to kick you out. Your clinician is not going to drop you. It's a healthy thing to happen in a healthy environment. It's powerful stuff. Uh-oh. That means we're almost out of time, so I better wrap this thing up. The last thing I want to say about transference is that because the therapist doesn't freak out at the client when the client explodes on them, they can, first of all, get that out. They get that catharsis, that venting moment. Ah! But also they can say, hey, some powerful stuff you said there. Let's talk about it more. And let's talk about how we can slowly let the air out of what is your emotional repression instead of waiting until it explodes. So it resets this foundation of maladaptive behaviors. Let's see if we have anything else with Sigmund Freud before I move on. Nope! We're up to humanistic therapies. But guess what? Next time in episode 3 of Therapies and Treatments with your Professor Gerding. Later.